Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the end of days. Or, as some like to call it, Saturday. Hello, I come to you now live from space, but now a different portion of space. A more expensive part of space. How is everyone doing this weekend? How is it going? How is it going? This is a stream. Was that 5 minutes? Yes, it was. How's everybody keeping today? I think all of our wallets, our purses, our money bags are all starting to feel a little bit lighter today. Almost have sound. Almost have sound, huh? Hello, hello, hello. Today is going to be a quick one, guys. We're going to do a little, what I like to call a speed stream today. Because I've got like an hour. I'm on a time limit. I'm on a time limit today. So we're gonna be speeding through this. The Forge World part of space. We will all be paying Forge World prices eventually, and we will love it. We will love it. We will be begging Games Workshop, please, please, more £40 models, please, please. Could be a little lighter. All right. I'll be honest. I don't get told that very often. I really don't. You want it lighter, huh? I don't know. Are we not good? Are we not good? We're already at 412 prices. Been there for a while. I mean, that's true. That is fair. Timer is running. Timing is running. Yeah, the timer is on, people. The timer is on for all of us, really. I mean, let's be honest. How long can this go on? How long can the prices keep rising before eventually we all have to acknowledge that Games Workshop just don't care anymore about having a casual, wider hobby, right? They don't want wargaming to be big. They just want to maximize the amount of money that they can eke out from wargamers. I'm pretty quiet. Okay. I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised to hear that, but I will I will fix it. Let's do this. Let's see what happens when I do this. Let's turn the gain up a little bit. Let's turn the game up just a little bit. How about that? Does that sound good? Are we good now, people? So, let me know if that sounds good. So here's the deal. I'm actually at a new location, not like a new home, but like I've moved like 5 feet. I basically moved a square, like a D&D grid square, basically, because I finally got my computer set up, and I'm trying to build a little bit of a space where I can do like hobby streams and do like streams that are physical. I know that we live in the physical realm, but what I'm saying is that I would love to like actually open boxes on a camera and like be able to paint models on a camera, and this is where we are right now. I adore your loud Irish Brook. Well, thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for the membership there, Crypto Kev. Welcome to the Advocate tier, the Elite tier. Woo! Okay. Oh, okay, so there's gonna be a little bit of a finagling, such as that. That is a big old super hands right there. That is a big old super hands. We're gonna need to turn that down right away. If you want your big massive super hands, now is the time to put it in. All right, cool. There we go. So you might notice that the UI is kind of like fiddly about and stuff like that. That is because we are changing things around. We are kind of changing things around a little bit here. So today's like a little bit of a test stream. I wasn't originally going to stream just because I don't have a ton of time, but then, you know what, I figured this Games Workshop price rise, I really need to chat about it. I really do. Because I've been seeing like a ton of like, not misinformation, but I think that people are generally speaking pretty confused about them. I just think that there's a lot of guff that goes around in the community. It's like, whenever you see, for example, we're kind of fresh off a month here where the Dungeons and Dragons community, where the TTRPG community came together, agreed that something was a problem, and then did something to resolve that. And I think that was really cool. But now we're going to see Games Workshop raising the price. Everyone's going to agree that's bad, and then we're going to get a ton of people defending the price rise. I mean, I'm sure we're already coming across people who are mentioning words like inflation and cost of living and, oh, the price of electricity's gone up. Price of electricity's gone up, you guys. Don't you know? So all of these things are true, but I think that there's a lot of nuance to them that people tend to leave out because really, it's kind of weird, right? This is kind of part of the problem. There's a lot of tribalism when it comes to Warhammer. There's a lot of tribalism. It feels like the Warhammer community, and I'm specifically talking about the Warhammer community here, not like wargaming generally. It feels like it has split into two different camps. There is the camp that detests Warhammer at this stage, or not really the game, but usually the company Games Workshop, and they are fed up with being treated in a certain way by Games Workshop. They have a lot of list of complaints. And then you get the other people who basically Games Workshop can do no wrong. Games Workshop has no issues whatsoever. It doesn't matter what Games Workshop do. There'll always be some sort of post facto rationale to justify it. And you get these two camps, and I see them a lot because I'm either always being called too negative or too positive, basically, in my coverage of Games Workshop. I'm always getting, like, somebody telling me that I'm either being too negative or too positive. As if that matters, right? As if I, as a content creator, I'm beholden to the idea of whether or not, oh, I'm gonna be too negative. Oh, I'm gonna be too positive, you know? Just giving my opinion. Just giving my opinion. How is my Space Marine force coming along, Girl Painting? Girl Painting, my Space Marine force would actually be, you would actually be watching a video on my Black Templar painting force were it not for Games Workshop fiddling about. So I was meant to have a video coming out tomorrow on my pile of shame, and then next week perhaps a little project video. Unfortunately, that all got pushed back because of the price rise, because of course I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow. I'm gonna have an actual full flip video. I literally just recorded it today. That is why that's why I've only got so much time today. That's why I can only stream for like an hour. It's because I spent most of my time recording, basically. And I don't want to put a live stream out tomorrow because I'm going to actually put out a video. Nuance in this situation. G-Dub's bad, Warhammer good. Reduce the brain power, says Scares Brian. Look, so here is the headline news, people. Here is the headline news. Games Workshop bad. In this instance, Games Workshop bad. Yes, the price rise is obviously bad, and it's really big. I think that's one of the things. Now, there is a little bit of there's been a little bit of a sneak going on. I don't know where this is coming. So, whenever the price rise first got mooted, so firstly, there is a price rise coming. For those who don't know, who don't know, in fact, actually, let's do it now. You're gonna have to bear with me here a little hot little second because. This is all, look at it. Hold on, guys. I understand exactly what's happened. Lip read me, people. Come on, lip read me, people. Hold on 1 second. I got this. We're setting it all up for the first time. Thank you very much for the donation there, Sugar Candy Miniatures. Your mic's on mute, silly. Thank you very much. Oh my god, look at this. I'm still, this is the test stream, guys. This is the test stream. That's what this is. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, I'll fix it now. I'll fix it. Boom. Here we go, people. Okay, you can hear me now? You can hear me now? Mac Attack, thank you very much for the donation, says, if people are upset about GW's pricing, there's a simple solution. Don't buy the product. There are plenty of other games to play. Many are great. Thank you very much for the donation, Mac, and I totally understand where you're coming from. I actually completely disagree with you. I don't think that we can vote with our wallets out of this one. I don't think that we can buy our way out of this one, personally. Mike Check, thank you very much for the donation. $10 there, says, what on earth is wrong with some of you people? She's doing gaming journalism. Her job isn't to take a side. The whole point is to stay neutral and objective, to tell the true story about GW, period. Mike, so I'm still muted. What? How am I still muted? Guys, I can't be still muted. I'm not still muted. I'm not. How can I still be muted? How can I still be muted over there? There should be sound. Is there sound? Not you hear me? Oh my god, guys. All right. Thank you very much for the donation there, Mac Attack. Says, if people are upset about GW's pricing, there's a simple solution. Don't buy their product. There are plenty of other games to play. Many are great. So, Mac, thank you very much for the donation. Thank you very much for the donation. I really appreciate that. I do disagree. I was just saying there. I do disagree, actually. I don't think that we can... I totally understand where you're coming from, but I don't think we can buy our way out of this. Because I don't think that we are relevant to Games Workshop's monetization strategy, basically. I don't think that, like, if you are somebody who feels like these prices are going to be too big, then the Games Workshop, you're not a Warhammer enjoyer, basically, according to Games Workshop. Games Workshop don't want your custom. They don't care. If you can't afford to pay $45 for 10 miniatures, Games Workshop don't care. They don't care because they want to sell other things. They want to sell army boxes. They want to sell big boxes to certain types of people. And if you're somebody who's like, I can't afford $45 for 10 minis like 10 times, they're like, well, I mean, don't, you don't like it, don't buy it. That's what they'll say, and then goodbye. That's their opinion. Mike Trike says, what on earth is wrong with some of you people? She's doing gaming journalism. Her job isn't to take a side. The whole point is to stay neutral and objective, to tell the true story about GW. Period. Thank you very much for the donation, Mike. Now that said, so I do agree. So obviously whenever so we all have a bias, right? So we're all going to have a bias. Like even the decision of what I cover, from the decision of what I actually cover, what videos I decide to create content on, how I talk about those things, they all obviously reveal an underlying bias that I have. I am a subjective human being. I'm not objective at all times, but I do try to base my opinions on facts and facts and logic. I do try to base my information on real information, right? But I do have a perspective. But I do try to look at things from all sides. I mean, basically, like this is how I like to play my D&D games. People, I like to play the oddballs, the weirdo characters who look at things from a different perspective. I do. So I'm very aware of the fact that there's a lot of tribalism that goes on. I wonder why people buy recasts, says Nox Minis. Finmark says, so they're only wheel hunting and aren't even interested in delicious shrimps. Well, I have a video coming out tomorrow that you might be very, very interested in. But yes, okay, so now, for some reason, you guys are saying that the audio isn't working whenever I go into browser view. Are you trolling me? Are y'all trolling me? So can you hear me now if I go bada bing bada boo, gabagool gabagool? Can you hear me? This is how I test my mic, by the way. If you can hear me right now, this is how I test my mic. Gabagool gabagool. So can you hear me? Can you hear me whenever I go into the browser there, guys? Or is it just is it broken? This is like a test stream, by the way. Audio is fine now. Thank you very much. Okay, awesome. Okay. Y'all trolling me. Let's see here. Okay. So, the price has gone up, people. Warhammer is going up from the 6th. Thank you very much. From the 6th of March, Warhammer price is going up. Now, Games Workshop averaged it out at around 6% for plastic kits, or as I like to call it, cheap plastic kits, because the plastic is indeed extremely cheap. Thank you very much for the donation there, CryptoCav. $5 donation. Plastic Pedro raised the point yesterday. Are the wheels long-term players with Stockholm Syndrome? Oh my god, look at the size of Super Hans's face. We gotta make this smaller. Oh, jeez. You can tell I really underestimated how big that was. Are the wheels long-term players with Stockholm Syndrome or new players who dive in deep and get burnt out? They're both. They're both. So there are, I don't know, should I be giving away? So I've got a video coming out tomorrow basically where I will talk explicitly about the type of people that Games Workshop are trying to monetize, because you can call it whales, but there are certain demographics of people that Games Workshop are indeed trying to monetize. One of them are new people who do not know better and then who will eventually fall out of the hobby, right? People who basically, they get into Warhammer, they play it for a little period of time, and then they begin to realize how expensive it is, and they either drop out or they become the type of player that Games Workshop wants in their game. The Games Workshop actually wants in their game. So, cheap plastic sold at a premium. Okay, so... Right, so the average price is going up 6%, which means 6% going up in price, right? That's what Games Workshop say from the 6th of March. Okay, but here's the little thing they don't like to mention, okay? Actually, whenever we look at the prices, now don't go crazy, don't look, I'm not losing you here, people. Don't just look at all these numbers and go, what the hell am I looking at, okay? Whenever we actually look at the percentage increase, so it's this column here that we care about. When we actually look at the percentage increase, we notice that there's a ton of stuff that is going up a lot. Now, you might have seen different numbers from this. So a little bit of misinformation has been spreading around the community. These are the correct numbers. There was another spreadsheet that was issued out by Games Workshop that was leaked to the public, and it showed numbers that were higher than this. In the previous pricing sheet that had been leaked, we were seeing numbers of over like 33% increase, which was insane. But that was by accident. Games Workshop didn't mean to release that. That's for November of this year. But right now, that's for the next price, right? That's for next year. This year, okay, the one that we're looking at, we're seeing price rises of around like 18% for a lot of models. Drukhari, Kabalite Warriors, we got an 18.4% increase in price from $38 to $45 for 10 Kabalite Warriors. Now, I think by anyone's measure, that's pretty insane. Mac Attack 001, thank you very much for the donation there. $5 says GW minis were their greatest selling point. 3D printing has changed that. GW rules, in my opinion, have always sucked. I have moved on several years back. Well, thank you very much for the donation. I totally agree. I think that the Warhammer game is in actually a lot of trouble, I think, right now. I actually think that it's gonna really struggle. It struggles to keep players interested in the actual game. There's like a small cadre of very competitive players, I think, who play it a lot. But honestly, I am increasingly coming to the conclusion that most of the competitive players, the reason why the competitive scene works so much is because the game has a lot of gotcha kind of elements. It's a very buy to win style of game, as opposed to a kind of traditional strategic war game. Ollie Wright, thank you very much for the €2 donation. Says the Welsh are lovely. It's a shame GW targets them. People, it's whenever I say wheels, okay, what I'm talking about are wheels. WHALE, all right? We're not talking about wheels like roundy round wheels. We're not talking about wheels as in like dragon flag, which is the coolest flag ever, wheels. We're talking about wheels. Which is interesting because I literally just put out a video on my Dungeons and Discourse channel about how Wizards of the Coast business model is actually progressing towards monetizing wheels. And for those who do not know what wheels are a small group of people who are willing to pay extremely high prices for products. Now, wheels are really useful, okay, for businesses. Imagine right now that I have like a suit and tie on and I'm pretending to be evil, okay? So wheels are really useful. Imagine I'm an executive. Wheels are really useful because you can drain them of lots of money. You can drain them for lots and lots and lots of cash. You can get lots and lots and lots of cash. As executives like to say, let's put the morality to one side. You can drain them of lots and lots of money. You can focus your efforts on monetizing this smaller group of people. And that means that actually, you can make a lot of cash. And whenever I say a lot of money from small groups of people, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars, okay? We're not talking like, if you're somebody who spent like $500 on Warhammer over like 5 years, you're not who I'm talking about. Who I'm talking about are people who are spending like $10,000, who are maybe buying new armies like every single month, who are buying like 5 army boxes. You know those guys, whenever like a new army gets released on Games Workshop, are like, buy an army box, you can get a codex and like 4 squads of infantry. Well, we're talking about the people who go into the store and buy 4 or 5 boxes of those and go, oh yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Like I'm gonna buy this, and then they'll go on to spend more money whenever the actual full range releases. Right? We're talking about that kind of group of people. Aurelian CB says the issue is, on the whole, the wheels don't have money; they are running up credit. So, yes, I think a massive misconception in the community, generally speaking, is that whales are actually wealthy. That they can afford to spend this. Obviously, there are people who can afford to spend that, and there are groups of whales who can afford to spend that. But equally, there are groups of whales who cannot, who are compulsive spenders, who have issues with spending habits, right? I think that there is an argument to be said that I personally, I mean, you'll see my pile of shame video, guys. Whenever my pile of shame video comes out later this month, you're gonna see, I'm not immune to a lot of the business practices of companies like Games Workshop. Thank you very much for the donation there. Dingo Dundee with the Australian $5 says, "Good day, Discourse mate. Does the price rise mean I have to mortgage my house to get a new Civ Battle Squad?" Okay, so here's the deal. I have seen the American price rise. I have not seen the Australian, but I feel for you, okay? Like, I'm anticipating a pretty rough time. So yeah, Games Workshop are claiming a 6% price rise on average, but it's not a price rise on average of 6%, because if we actually look at the sheet here, most of the stuff that matters, start collecting, we got Tyranids, we got Orc Boys, we got Eldari, we got Drukari, we got start collecting sets. These are all going up like 10%, 10 to 18%. Most of the ranges are going up like 10%. You have to start scrolling way down to get to like 6%, right? Get to the combat patrols and things like that at that stage, which are actually closer to 7%. So this is a pretty intense price rise. And we're seeing a lot of people argue that it's from inflation. So there's a lot of stuff to go into there. Now I actually talk about this a lot more in the video. It's a lot easier to talk about this stuff in a kind of scripted content. But in terms of whether or not Games Workshop have to rise this, right? Because that's how they couch this stuff. Where is it? They couch this stuff in a sort of, oh, we needed to, we're sorry, we have to, we're sure it hasn't escaped your notice that a lot of things are more expensive than they used to be. Food, materials, transport, essentials, and luxuries alike. Well, I'm sure Kevin Roundtree knows about the rising cost of yachts. Stuff costs more to make and more to move, and Warhammer is not immune to these changes. So that's kind of how they couch things. But I want to bring you to the Games Workshop annual report. And I want to do a little. Let's see. What's this? Let's see. Let's see. I haven't even read this, by the way. I haven't even looked at this in a while. Let's see here. Ooh, Games Workshop and the Warhammer hobby are in great shape. Another rewarding and successful period for the global team, with core sales for the 6 months of over £200 million for the first time. We will continue to focus on making the best miniatures in the world, sign new licensing contracts with partners to exploit our IP outside of our core business, and support our staff. So, which is it, Kevin? Is it times are hard, or is it, yay, everything's awesome? I mean, we know the answer, right? It depends on who he's talking to. If it's investors, everything's great, everything's fantastic. We're making more money than ever. And if it's to consumers, it's, things are bad. Times are bad. Ooh, things are really bad right now. Here's the deal. I assembled a little. Thank you very much for the donation there. Mac Attack says, "Am I a super chat wheel? Very curious where you're from. I can't place your accent. Definitely enjoy your content." Well, thank you very much for the donation. I'm glad to hear that you enjoy my content. I'm from the moon, and that is this is the moon accent. Is what you get. It's kind of a mixture of Ireland and MTV. That's kind of where it's all come from. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm from Ireland, by the way. Okay, so here's the deal, right? So I tweeted this. I tweeted this out. I tweeted this out. Nick Fraser donated. Thank you very much. Says, "Gotta see the shame pile." Oh, it's coming. It's coming. So I tweeted this out. Basically, I got the list of price rises from Games Workshop since 2016. These are the price rises. So every single year, Rain or Shine, Warhammer goes up. In 2016, we got a 3% price rise. In 2017, we got a 3% price rise. 3%, 3%. 2020, it was 4%. Oh, which is funny, actually. Because the moment the Games Workshop actually start making more money, they started raising the price. 2021, 2 to 7%. 2022, 5%. 2023, 6% this year. 6%. These are Games Workshop's profits are at an all-time high, and they're raising the price by 6%. Now, yeah, Dungeon Mistress Lee was actually kind enough to put in the UK inflation rates here, and you can see that obviously the inflation is much, much lower. It's obviously much, much, much lower than how much they raised the price by. You know, there is no correlation between the inflation. Well, there is. It's a very loose correlation, right? 2021, the inflation was up to 2.51. Actually, I actually got a slightly more. Yeah, it was 9%, and it went up 6 in 2022, I guess. In 2021, it went 2.5. You know, these are very, very loose, very, very loose correlated. Oh, thank you very much for the donation there. Scython says, and the price rise happens just a few months after they screwed LGS prices. These GW folks are begging us to create a new wargaming culture. Cheers. Well, thank you very much for the donation there. Yeah, so that's another thing, obviously. So there was a price rise last year, and then in November, December last year, there was also a price rise to retail stores. I did a video covering that as well, where the actual retail price was raised, but Games Workshop were like, don't worry, we're not going to pass it on to consumers. Though we're going to raise your price, third-party store, so, you know, you should probably hit into your margins instead. Like, what is to be done? What is to be done at this stage? Zenster says, stop spending money on people who hate you. So, it's tough to say, though. Like, I mean, at this stage, the thing is, I feel like wargaming is getting whittled down. In 2020, right, we had this massive explosion of popularity in Warhammer. It was Warhammer specifically. It wasn't wargaming, it was Warhammer. There was this huge population of players who got interested. Did everyone remember the headlines from like 2020? I'm sure there's plenty of people in chat who got into Warhammer in 2020 who were like, okay, cool. Who, during the pandemic, and they were at home, everyone got into Warhammer. And there was a huge population of casual players who suddenly got into Warhammer. And then what has followed is 3 years of Games Workshop trying to whittle down that mass number of people into a small group who are willing to pay a lot of money. Over time, it's happened. Pirate Teacher says, work over your staff, your customers, your fans, and just keep on scalping. It definitely feels that way, for sure. It definitely feels that way. I mean, here's the deal, right? So, I know a lot of people who've played Warhammer. I started playing Warhammer like 20 years ago. And, bingo. So I started playing Warhammer like 20 years ago. And the prices have steadily gone up. And they've actually, so in a lot of ways, they've doubled since then. And I have witnessed people who I am friends with, who I played Warhammer with, have gotten out of the game, have just left the game. A lot of the times they have just left wargaming entirely. And for the longest time, you know, I tried to convince them to stay in it and stuff, but they just couldn't afford to keep in. And as they got more responsibilities, so they maybe got like, they had kids and stuff like that, then people just can't afford to play Warhammer. And I think that's a shame because actually, I think it should be a very affordable hobby, wargaming. And to be honest, most companies are pretty affordable. But people get locked into this idea that Warhammer is the game. For the longest time, I have been in two minds. I've been balancing the scales. Is Warhammer good for wargaming? And for the longest time, I wasn't sure. Because on the one hand, you have Warhammer is this massive, like, shining beacon, this lighthouse that draws people into wargaming in theory, draws them into the idea of collecting little miniature toys and building them and painting them and playing games on a big table with other people and rolling dice and getting into games and having fun. For the longest time, I thought Warhammer attracts people into the game. And sure, it's really expensive, and sure, it's really aggressively monetized, and sure, they are Games Workshop are anti-consumer. But what happens is people get annoyed at Games Workshop and they will leave Warhammer, but then they will discover all these other companies that are explicitly trying to pivot themselves against Games Workshop. These companies who are like, come to us instead. We sell miniatures for cheaper. You know, oh, Bolt Action. We're like Warhammer in World War II. Or Mantic Games. Or like, we're Warhammer Fantasy. We're Warhammer 40k, but with like a grid system, right? All these miniature companies who sell minis for cheaper. Perry Miniatures. and they still have awesome games. And a lot of times the game is better than Warhammer 40k. And I always was like, okay, so that's kind of the pipeline, right? You get people who go to Warhammer, they fall out of Warhammer, they get into wargaming, they play wargaming, job's a good boss. However, as time has gone on, and as I have thought about this, and I've spoken to more people, I'm becoming increasingly of the opinion that Warhammer is overall a net negative for wargaming. That in actuality, it has killed wargaming as a viable hobby for a lot of people. And the reason for this is simple. Most people get kind of blinded and attracted, like it's less like a lighthouse, but Warhammer acts more like one of those fly zappers. You know, the big bright light that attracts flies into them, and then the moment they touch it, they just get zapped and killed? Warhammer acts more like that increasingly, I suspect. And the reason why I'm beginning to think this is because people join wargaming through Warhammer. They discover Warhammer, they discover the prices, they discover how much it will be, they buy in, and typically they buy in big because they're really passionate. They're like, oh my god, I'm so interested in this wild hobby. This is so cool. And they get into wargaming through Warhammer. They buy a bunch of minis, they have this huge pile of shame, this huge stack of minis, they get like maybe 2 squads done, maybe a tank, maybe a leader, and they go, okay, right, okay, this is a little bit much. They play a game, they go, okay, this game kind of sucks. I'm not actually having fun in this game because it's really new player unfriendly. I don't disagree that there is a fun game in Warhammer, but I think for new players, it's very hard to find that fun. And then what happens? What happens to wargamers then who got in through Warhammer? They leave. It's very rare that they actually go, you know what? Warhammer isn't for me. I'm going to instead try a Mantic game, Dead Zone. I'm going to instead try Dead Zone. Increasingly, I'm beginning to realize that people don't do that. They just don't do that. And then it's really hard to proselytize new games to Warhammer players. You can bring your like Blood and Plunder set down to like a local game store, not a Games Workshop store. You're not allowed to play other games there. You can bring your Blood and Plunder set or your Infinity set down to like a local game store and try to say to somebody, hey, Warhammer player, would you like to play this game instead? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say no. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say no. There was a conversation I saw happening in my Discord. There was Mike, who's a big fan of Wild West Exodus, was saying that increasingly, that in his opinion, trying to convert people from Warhammer into another game is almost impossible. It's almost impossible to do because they have like a sunk cost into Warhammer, or they think that because Warhammer's really expensive, most games are going to be really expensive, or they think that because Warhammer has incredibly hard to learn rules that are really onerous, other war games are going to be the same, or they're like, I just don't have the brain space for more than one game, or they go, you know what, Warhammer burned me, I'm never going to play again. They just don't get into it. That in actuality it is easier to convince people who are into war game, or people who are into role-playing games, and people who are into board games to get into war games generally. And so therefore, what that means is that if people who play Warhammer are harder to convince to play other war games, then maybe the wargaming hobby has been completely devastated by the existence of Warhammer. Maybe it would have been better if Warhammer didn't exist and people who were into people who were into board games, instead the pathway would be board game, war game, or RPG, war game. Instead, what happens is it goes, board game, I'm going to play a war game. Nope, Warhammer. I play Warhammer. And they bang into this wall where everyone else is playing Warhammer. And the entire hobby is ossified around this single brand that ultimately has so many problems that most sane people can't keep up with it. And that is where my head is at right now. That is where I am beginning to come. Now, I saw there was a couple of super chats there. Thank you very much, guys. Let's see here. Let me catch up on those. Digo Dundee, thank you very much for the donation. Says the cost of first class tickets, 5-star hotels, limousines, and international holidays have risen for corporate people. The per buggers equals a Games Workshop price hike. That is very true. That is very true, Dingo. Thank you very much for the super chat. I mean, won't somebody think of the per executives? Verathron, thank you very much for the $5 donation. Says make it acceptable to play war games with dollar store army men again. I totally agree. I think use your proxies, people. Proxy everything. Proxy everything. Cryptocow says, how do we get normies away from GW and into others? Thank you very much for the donation. So the thing about Games Workshop, how do we get them into other games? The thing about getting them into other games, that many people get into Warhammer through the IP, right? They're interested in the IP, so they'll play like Dark Tide, or they'll play like Total War Warhammer, and they're like, okay, cool, I really like the IP. They'll read the books, they'll see pictures, they'll hear people talking about it online, they're like, okay, these models look cool, and then that's how they get into it. So they're like, are they even wargamers at that stage? I mean, like, are they of actual interest? I would love to speak to a company that's like, I'd love to speak to a company like Mantic or something, and I would love to know from them whether or not they actually think of Warhammer players as their target audience, or whether or not they go after a different, like, a kind of different audience. If they just kind of accept that, like, most people who get into Warhammer aren't actually interested too much in wargamers. There's this almost inane conversation that I see happening, kind of like wargaming or Warhammer, like Twitter and like online discourse. I see it happen all the time of people asking themselves, like, oh, are you a Warhammer hobbyist if you only read the books? And it's like the most inane thing I've ever heard in my entire life. You're a Warhammer fan, sure, but you're not a wargamer, right? Because the actual act of building and painting miniatures and playing with them on a table is a kind of different thing from reading a book about a setting that you like. It's just a different experience. And I get that there's a lot of people out there who are wargamers, who collect the models, and then they just assemble wargaming books. Same with RPGs, and you never get to play them, you just have them, but the aspiration is there, right? The aspiration is there. Right? The aspiration is there. That's what counts. Wiley, thank you very much for the $5 donation. Says, Orc Boss says, we need fresh meat. Then buy some meat, not stupid workshops meat, and wah! Okay, gotta love the Orc RP. Always loving it. Always loving it. Yeah, this is kind of the problem, right? And it kind of goes hand in hand with the whole Warhammer is a hobby, right? The idea, this is why I really detest the idea that Warhammer is a hobby, because it adds another barrier on top of people trying other games. And in a lot of ways, I think that this is why one-page rules is so important to the ecosystem of wargaming, because one-page rules is sort of explicitly the Warhammer game for Warhammer players that's better, right? It's the game that's like, okay, the models are cheap, the game rules are simple and fast and good to play, okay? They're easy to play, they're fun. And people who are into Warhammer have gotten into wargaming through one-page rules, I find, more than any other game. So that's one of the reasons why I really like one-page rules. And actually, so if I had have done a video on like my war game of 2022, it would have been Grimdark Future. Let me catch up here. Let me see. Red Boras, thank you very much for the $5 donation. Says GW is not a gateway game. Mostly they stick around for 3 to 5 years, then they go do something else. We see this all the time at our LGS. I totally agree. That is 100% my experience as well. It has taken me like 20 years to like realize this, but that is totally my experience as well. It just doesn't act as a gateway game. Warhammer feels at this stage more like a wall that people slam into, and they can't get past it. They can't get past it. Now there are some people. It's not like there's not like a people who do get into other games from Warhammer. I'm not saying that's not the case. I'm sure there's plenty of people here in chat who you maybe started with Warhammer, but then you discovered other games. The problem is that Warhammer's a really bad introduction to wargaming. It's more expensive than other war games. It's harder to play than other war games. It's more convoluted than other war games. It has a lot more like kind of moving parts than other war games, from the stratagems to having the codices. It's actually a really bad introduction to war games. This would be like if basically the board game that everybody played was Twilight Imperium, right? Except that Twilight Imperium is actually a really good game. Basically, there's a lot of moving parts in Twilight Imperium, and I don't think that Twilight Imperium is like a good example, a good board game, right? Just the way that I think that Warhammer is not a good war game. I think it's, in actuality, a pretty bad introduction to wargaming. I think it sits on like the complexity meter, it sits at like way up there, and on the accessibility meter, it sits very far away from what I would want to see. And so it actually works as like, it's almost like an advertisement for wargaming that's bad. You know, you play Warhammer, you're like, why would I want to get into another one of these? This is tough. And there are companies out there, I think, that make better gateway games that are expensive. Like, for example, Star Wars Legion. Star Wars Legion is very expensive, and it's getting more expensive. But I would still recommend that game over Warhammer to new people, because as much as it is expensive, it's a more playable experience. It's a funner, faster game. It's more accessible to people to actually play. Even though I have issues with the game, I don't like a lot of the peripherals, I don't like the pricing model, but I would still recommend that game over Warhammer. And I imagine that if Star Wars Legion was like the big Warhammer, like the big war game, rather than Warhammer, I imagine that actually we would probably see more wargamers. We'd probably see more wargamers. But yeah, so this is where I'm at. Sorry, this is where the price rise is taking me. This is where my brain is at the minute. Especially when I look to the future and I look to see what the future business model of Games Workshop is, and I look to see basically you can extrapolate where we're going from where we are. And we are looking at a game that is increasingly getting more expensive, a game that is increasingly relying on big massive bundles to sell things. We're talking army boxes, we're talking kill team boxes, massive terrain sets, these Warhammer seasons. All these things can conspire to make wargaming less accessible, more expensive, more convoluted. And as a wargamer first, okay, I like Warhammer. This is the thing, I like Warhammer, but I am a wargamer. I want to play the games. I want to buy the miniatures. I wanna go down to my local hobby store. I wanna roll some dice and I wanna have fun, you know? And I hate that for some reason our fate seems to not be entwined with the fate of this 30, 40-year-old game that really has only innovated in a certain direction, and that direction is profit, is money making. Crypto Kev says, I'd be down for a Discourse Mantic interview, says Crypto Kev. I'm not sure how great I'd be at interviews. Blackjack Legacy, he does a lot of awesome interviews with different industry people. If you're interested in like hearing from actual industry veterans and from different companies and stuff like that, I totally recommend his channel. Grognar, thank you very much for the 5-point donation, says, it is the sunk cost fallacy. People get infested, and the more they spend, the more reluctant they are to start from scratch with another system. You're 100% correct, Grognard. You're 100% correct. People get trapped. They get trapped in this room with Games Workshop where they've spent, say, and they don't have to complete an entire army. In fact, if anything, having half an army is even worse because you buy in. This is why Games Workshop love those army boxes, by the way, because what happens is, right? You're a wargamer. You're like, oh, they're bringing out space dwarves. They're bringing out I was gonna say Dawe. My brain is like Warhammer Fantasy all of a sudden. The Votann, right? The Leagues of Votann. Games Workshop are releasing the Leagues of Votann. Now, in the olden days, I get to say that now. I'm allowed to say the olden days now. In the olden days, what you would get is like a bunch of different releases, right? Games Workshop will release a troops box. You know, like you could buy like 20 troops. You could buy like a blister pack with a character mod, like a leader unit. They bring out the vehicles. They bring out all these things separately. So you can mix and match. You can buy things as you want. These days, though, what do? They release an army box first. They release an army box for like a month or two before they actually release anything else. And they are really sneaky because they don't tell you how long it's just going to be the army box. So there's a little element of FOMO there, a little element of fear of missing out because you're like, okay, well, hold on then. How long is this army box going to be out? And they bundle it together. They give you like a cross selection of units. They give you the beginnings of an army and they throw a codex on there. And then they say, it's a little bit discounted from what it will normally be. So what happens is you buy in. You're like, okay, I'm kind of interested in Votann. I'm going to buy in. And now you've bought into the beginning of an army. And that's the most dangerous thing of all because now you have a start of an army. Now that sunk cost is coming in. It's kicking in now, right? It's kicking in totally. And now imagine you're somebody who bought 2 boxes, 3 boxes. You can't leave the game. You've just spent like £500 on these models. Warhammer is an army game. It gets really rough, and sunk cost is definitely 100% a huge thing. But again, I think this is why One Piece is. I don't mean to like go on about this, but this is why Grimdark Future is so important to me because it allows people to actually play with their Warhammer models in another game and discover that there is this kind of like this Elysium fields of other games, right? And actually leave, and it's like an off-ramp from the Warhammer ecosystem. Simon Nilo, thank you very much for the donation, says that lever becomes the example to his friends as well. Exactly. Once one person goes, then it starts to get tougher for everybody else, right? Command Line Cody says, other companies are starting to follow GW's pricing lead. Star Wars Shatterpoint price point is ridiculous. It really is. It really is. Shatterpoint, way too expensive. Way too expensive. Absolutely outrageously costly. But they're not the only ones, right? There are other companies as well that are following their lead too. Let's see here. Andrew Mento Matos, thank you very much for the donation, says, I think Battletech Alpha Strike is a great introduction to other war games to Warhammer players in models and lore. Battletech does have the advantage. It has a ton of lore. And if we recall, I mean, remember, Jesus, was it 2 years now? Was it 2 years ago now when the boycott of Warhammer occurred in the community after the shutdown of fan communities and fan kind of creators at the arrival of Warhammer Plus, really? It's a pity there was no D&D Beyond kind of element that we could all just unsubscribe to. I saw earlier, Spaggy Bits were saying that we should all unsubscribe from Warhammer Plus to show our displeasure of the price rise. And my first thought was like, what, all 4 of them? Oh no, we've lost 100% of our viewers. We're down $20 this month. No, that's not true. There are a couple thousand. There's like 500,000, right, of viewers. But like, it's a tiny amount of people. It's a tiny segment of the population. But yeah, remember, so 2 years ago, 1 year ago, whenever that occurred, a lot of people moved on to BattleTech. I think BattleTech actually does. I have never played BattleTech, but I am aware of BattleTech, and I've seen some of the lore of BattleTech, and I do think it kind of taps into a similar space that a lot of Warhammer fans are fans of. Oh, thank you very much for the gifted memberships there, Charles. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. A lovely little donation there. Matt Damage, thank you very much for the $5 donation. Says, love the discourse as always. Rick, thanks for getting the STL files in your Patreon. You're running a better business than you do. Thank you very much. That's right. Well, thank you for mentioning it, Matt. Yes, so this is something I'm really excited about because I do fervently believe in trying to spotlight like smaller creators in this space. And so I've started trying to do discount deals with content creators, with model creators. This month, we have surrogate miniatures on my Patreon, so members of my Patreon get a 50% discount code off the entire store. And every month, I'm going to be rotating that. I'm going to be reaching out to another small creator in order to try and spotlight their creations on my Patreon, basically. And then it allows me to do so in videos and stuff as well, so that's pretty cool. I'm actually really excited about that. I think that it's a really cool, like, it's like I'm like a little voucher book, you know, like one of those little vouchers, like every month you get another discount code. I just think it's really neat. But thank you very much for the kind words. David, thank you very much for the $5 donation that asks, have you played Conquest? So I have played Conquest. I played it at UKGE last year. I played a kind of demo game. I haven't played much further than that. There are a couple of elements. So firstly, I really like the miniatures. I think the miniatures look really cool. I really like the vibe of them. I love the undead Roman guys. I love the human states. I kind of dig that. I like the way the elves are like really weird looking. For those who don't know, the elves are like aliens from another dimension. They look really funky. They flash craft stuff. It's very gross and grotesque. I think it's very interesting. There are elements of the gameplay though that I find very interesting, very different, but like in a bad way. So for example, instead of a 6 being the role you want a 1, right? They reversed all the positions, which just feels a little bit gimmicky to me, but sure. The gameplay itself was kind of fun. I'm not sure how much I enjoyed so whenever the game starts, you actually deploy as part of the game. The game starts with like a blank table, and then you put units on the table one by one and actually move with those units and like start playing with them as if they're all arriving just to the battlefield. So it's interesting. I like to play it a lot more though. I've only played like the one demo game again, like I said, so I don't like have a crazy amount of opinion on it. Though I will say the price point for the game is quite expensive. Conquest does have great miniatures, says Red. When are you playing Kings of War? Asked Colin Mac. Okay, so here's the deal, guys. I did buy Kings of War. I didn't buy, I got a halfling army, and I am in the middle of building those, but I've been in the middle of building those for like a year. You will see this on my Palace Shame video. I've got a lot of ongoing projects for sure. For sure. Thank you very much for the follow there, OneEyeTW on Twitch. Thank you very much for the follow there. It's Discourse Games on twitch.tv. Here's the deal, right? So wargaming itself is pretty much at the most popular it's ever been. We are in a lot of ways kind of in a bit of a golden age, although I've seen increasingly smaller companies are starting to struggle these days. Like there's companies that have been going under, the sculptors who have had to drop out entirely because things have gotten more expensive. But one of the companies who I would say that can most weather that storm is a company like Games Workshop. Games Workshop are making more money than ever, and increasingly they're making that money in places that have very little costs associated with them. So for example, their actual royalties is going up increasingly. Now it's not like the majority of their income, but increasingly it's becoming a more significant proportion of their revenue. What's the beauty of royalties? Well, this is the stuff from like video games, from TV shows. This is just from all the little side media where you've licensed out the IP of Warhammer and then you're getting all this money in. And the beauty of that, it's like a tribute. It's like you're a warlord. You're like, pay up. Whoa, give me the tax. And what the beauty of that is that actually it doesn't come with any costs. It doesn't come with any costs. It's free money. It's free real estate, people. It's just free money. entirely. It's like there's a light tax on it. It's like a very small amount of tax on it, but otherwise it just doesn't have any cost associated with whatsoever. So it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And Games Workshop are increasingly making more money that way, right? And also there is another little element here, I think, that I meant to mention earlier, but I never got to mention it. And it's basically the beauty of this, okay, is when people these days are defending the Games Workshop price rises. They're saying things like it's inflation, it's that the UK is being hit exceptionally hard right now by the kind of global events, right? We'll just do that big global event, like whatever you want to call all the big problems right now with global manufacturing and things like that. We'll just like do a big bubble called global events. And the UK is being hit particularly hard because of very specific context of the UK. Here's the deal, though. What that has meant is that the pound has dropped in value a lot. Now, what does that mean? It means that for a company that does a lot of sales overseas, that they're making more money now because they're selling products to, say, America. I think they do 18.4% of all their trade in America. So 18.4% of all their sales occurs in the USA, North America, okay? In the USA. And those sales are actually making them more money because Americans are paying in dollars and the dollars are worth more pounds. And so therefore, what was worth, $100 was worth like £70 last year. Now it is worth £83 this year. So they're actually making a lot more cash. This actually benefits them in a lot of ways. It totally benefits them in a lot of ways. Bradley O says inflation can suck on this 3D printer. 3D printer go burr and such things, yes. So the pound is more like an ounce, says the Ant King. Yes. Zed says people are defending it. LMAO fanboys will be fanboys. May I have some more abuse, please? People are defending it. It's because people have formed a parasocial relationship with Games Workshop, the brand. So this is the thing, right? Games Workshop have fostered a very powerful, a very powerful parasocial relationship with their player base. It's because people read into Games Workshop as a brand, as like an entity, as like a friend, as in they get all those funny tweets and the funny Warhammer community posts and they go, oh, Games Workshop cares about me as an individual person. But Games Workshop doesn't care about anybody. Games Workshop cares about their shareholders. That's all they care about. That's why they're always like, oh, boy, don't worry, boys. We got him. We got him. We got him, boys. Now, there is one thing I did want to bring up. There is one thing that I did really want to bring up. And it's something I think everybody needs to remember. In the context of this price increase, we all need to remember, okay? In the context of this price increase, you hear anybody mention the words, Games Workshop had to do it, or Games Workshop are under hard times. This is the response, okay? In 2022, Games Workshop increased dividends for shareholders from £32.8 million to £54.2 million, which is a 60% increase in money paid out to investors. Like, what more needs to be said? What more needs to be said? They're raising the price so that they can raise the amount of money that they pay out to shareholders. A 60% increase. That's what the 6% increase is for. That's an insane amount of money. An insane increase in dividends to pay out to shareholders. An insane increase. How is this defensible? How can anyone actually defend this? How can anyone say this is better? Like, this is healthy. This is good. This is good for wargaming. Right? I could understand how you would say this if you are an investor. And in fact, actually, sometimes what I discover is when I'm having a particularly heated discussion with somebody about whether or not it is good or bad, I find out that they themselves are a shareholder of Games Workshop, and I go, oh, I see why you're in favor of higher prices. I'm beginning to see why you're in favor of higher prices. Yeah. Censor says, I should be a shareholder to screw the GW fans. I mean, yeah, I mean, incidentally, you're kind of screwing them. Now, there are people out there who say that you should just like buy shares then, and then you can make your opinion known. The problem with that is that it's just impossible. If you're like an individual and you buy shares, you're a drop of the. You don't matter, right? The people who matter are these massive pension funds. Like that's who these increasing dividends are being paid out to. They're massive pension funds who actually don't care about Games Workshop whatsoever. They don't care about the hobby. They don't care about wargaming. They don't care about the price of plastic. They just want more money, right? They're just a huge pension fund. They're like faceless, they're nameless. And I know that because, well, I've worked with these big pension funds. Reader Fioregan says Bank of America and Hasbro. Yeah, that's the Hasbro are another thing. Mogwai Man says GW customers are middle class salary and above. Traditionally, yes. Now, you will find people who try to play Warhammer on a lower salary, and they do so. There are people who put themselves in positions that's probably bad. There are people who are quite savvy. They'll do things like they'll buy secondhand minis and stuff like that. But it is hard, man. It is hard to poor hammer, as it is called. It really is hard. It's very difficult. Yeah, you need a majority of shares. Exactly, Crypto Kev. You need a majority of shares, right? Shareholders these days, so the entire, increasingly, I'm beginning to think that this is public companies, because for like the last 10, 15 years, we've begun to see the kind of, it feels like almost like the inevitable conclusion of how these large public corporations operate. It's like the inevitable conclusion where they push things too far. It just goes too far, and everything starts to collapse, right? We move from a position where there's these little private companies who just want to make good products and sell fun products for a reasonable cost, and then they make enough money to continue to do that. That was like the old school way of doing things. Now it's to try and monopolize markets, try to squeeze as much money from an increasingly small amount of people, and then question mark profit. Right? That's where we are now. Charles, thank you very much for the $5 donation. Says Games Workshop content people desperately trying to prove that they were not idiots by investing so much into a game. Increasingly, it does feel that way. Like, I would love to create content that was about celebrating things in wargaming. I would love to create content that was only about celebrating things in wargaming. That was just like little projects of me going off to like build an army or like how to play this game. But I don't have the time. I'm literally too busy having to cover this stuff. Having to cover price rises and army boxes and bundle sets and how wargaming is becoming even less accessible as more people have demonstrated that they're interested in the game. Games Workshop have raised the barrier to entry. It's just it's so frustrating to me. Hurricane Life says it would be easier to probably go back in time to the 90s and invest $1 million to buy in or take over now. Yeah, so for those who have watched my recent video on Dungeons and Discourse, I introduced a character called Radical Discourse, who is from the 90s, but the 90s never ended, but they also have blackberries. And yeah, that's the dream, right? To look at it from the perspective of someone from the 90s and be like, what the hell is going on? Let's see. Brian Hull says, Hurricane Life says, GW Boutique, the slots are to get you in the door, but they want you at the table. Games giving the house big bank. Yeah, it's all about the big wheels paying on the slot machines, right? It's tough. Oh, we are at time, ladies and gentlemen. We are at time. This is 6 p.m. I'm gonna have to go now and I've got 5 minutes. I got 5 minutes. Look, here's the thing. I think if you take anything from this price rise, it's to maybe look at other games. If you're someone who only plays Warhammer, and I get that you can identify what it is that you enjoy about Warhammer. You can say something to the case of, I don't like war games, I actually just like Warhammer. But I suspect a lot of people who say that just don't like Warhammer, but they would like war games, right? Like if the intrinsic idea of collecting miniatures, painting them, and building a story around them, and then playing with them on a table in a structured play format is kind of at least in some way appealing enough that you would buy miniatures, that I suggest try another war game. Try another rule set and just see if you like it. See if it is actually a wargaming that you're into. Crypto Kev, thank you very much for the $2 donation. Says Radical Discourse gets a thumbs up. Woo. GW, people were complaining about GW prices in the 90s too, says Boros. They were, but I will leave this little snippet. The prices for Games Workshop models has doubled since 2006. The price have doubled since 2006. So things are uniquely bad now, right? Things are uniquely bad now. And if you go back and you look at the prices, then you'll see that. Now, in the 90s, the prices were higher. Like, proportionally, they were higher than in the 2000s. But I started in the 2000s. That is my frame of reference. And I charted from there to today, and the prices have doubled. That's bad. That is really, really bad. Let's see, Radio Free Armageddon says, after buying $500 of chainmail from Wizards of the Coast, I'm jaded against games with no player base. No, I get you there. I understand, you know, you don't want to play games with no player base. That's really tough. And this is an issue that other war games have, is that often you get these kind of fads where people get all in on a game and then they kind of move on to another game, right? There's that kind of magpie effect. For sure, I do think that that's the case. What I would love is like a contender to Games Workshop on just the wargaming merits. But right now, we just don't have one. Mac Attack, thank you very much for the donation. Says 2 things to make your day better. Don't watch the news. Stay off the bathroom scale. Well, thank you very much, Mac. I try to do both of those things. Baron's War is recommended by Panzer Kaput. Says, I suggest playing Baron's War from Warhost. Amazing game, and it's a fun game. Yeah, so Baron's War does actually look really interesting. I would love to try some of those. Actually, you know what? I would love to play. There's some historical games that are definitely on my radar, but I tend to like a little bit of fantasy in mine. So I'd probably play, not Baron's, what is the Dragon Rampart. Yeah. So yeah, Games Workshop raising the price 6%. Not necessary. Games Workshop have a margin of, off the top of my head, 33%. So they would have been able to absorb these costs. They decided not to. They increased dividends to shareholders by 60%. So evidently there's a lot of money going around. Maybe that could have just went into increased tooling instead of having us pay it. And it's going to push people out of the hobby. It's going to push people out of wargaming. It's going to push people out of Warhammer, the game. And there's going to be lots of people who are going to drown, who are not going to be able to afford to play Warhammer anymore as a result of this price rise, and that absolutely sucks. 3D printing is an option that is open to some people, but not to everybody. I don't think that it's going to be the solution to resolving these issues. I think it might eventually, like in 2 decades, but not right now. I don't think it is right now. Things are tough. Things are hard. And Games Workshop did not need to raise the prices, is I think the nice little summary there. Thank you very much for the donation there, Lee Kessner. $5 donation says, guys, do insure your minis with homeowners insurance because a friend of mine lost a whole closet full of minis in a fire. Yes, do so. That really sucks for your friend. I'm really sorry to hear that, but yes, totally do. If you do have homeowners insurance, calculate the minis cost into there, because it's if you're me, then you got 2 rooms full of minis, okay? If you're me, then you got 2 rooms full of miniatures. So do get those things insured. Girlpini says, well, I've switched 100% to 3D printing, and I won't go back. So I like 3D printing, but it's not like a replacement to me for buying miniatures. I also like to buy miniatures. I like to purchase miniatures. I like to have them pre-made. I don't like, I like to just buy them and have them. And there are miniatures out there that are being made by people that are really, really cool. So 3D printing isn't like a be-all, end-all for me, but it definitely should supplement, I think. If you're somebody who's spending, if you're gonna buy like 2 army boxes, if you're spending that amount of money in wargaming, yeah, at that stage, start to think about 3D printers. Although obviously there are other complications like chemicals and stuff like that until resolved, and I don't think they will ever take over. Charles says, with the $5 donation, thank you very much, says, dividends are the way CEOs bribe their way into keeping their jobs. Yes, yes it is, and I think on that's a very good note to leave. George Hawkins says, the more you raise your prices, the more customers will slip through your fingers. Indeed. We saw recently the Dungeons and Dragons community rise up against Wizards of the Coast and force Wizards of the Coast to make a change that Wizards of the Coast really did not want to make. And they did that by canceling subscriptions, by hitting the money of Wizards of the Coast. Here's the deal though, right? And this is the thing. This is like the big thing, the big difference, I think. Because again, Spiky Bit said, let's all cancel our Warhammer Plus subscriptions. Okay? Here's the problem, right? Whenever it came to Dungeons and Dragons, Wizards of the Coast rely on Dungeons and Dragons Beyond, D&D Beyond, that platform. That's how they monetize Dungeons and Dragons. That's like their main way now of monetizing Dungeons and Dragons. They lost millions when people started canceling it. On the other hand, Games Workshop rely on big spenders of physical products. So trying to call for a boycott of Games Workshop, of like Warhammer, by like canceling Warhammer Plus, it's basically like trying to call for a boycott of Magic the Gathering by trying to boycott Magic the Gathering online. But people are still buying booster packs, right, for Magic. Like, it's a misidentification of where the actual money comes from. There's no way that I can see that we can like mobilize as a group, even if we were all to cancel like Warhammer Plus. I don't think that this price rise would be reversed at all. You know, and D&D is way more mainstream than 40k. Yeah, exactly. Hurricane Live. It is. D&D is way more mainstream. It has a larger audience of people. And I don't think that's necessarily because of the kind of IP. In fact, D&D IP is kind of weak. Which Wizards of the Coast did discover. I think it's more so, firstly, it is popular culture. It is things like Stranger Things got people into Dungeons and Dragons, Critical Role, right? But the reason why Warhammer's never taken off is because of the barrier to entry in terms of cost. In terms of cost, there's a huge barrier to entry in terms of cost. People like Google it and they go, nah, no thanks. No thanks. And Dungeons and Dragons is easier to try. It is easier to try. So we just don't have as many people. I think that wargaming could be way more popular as the pandemic showed. As the pandemic showed, there is a huge group of people who would be willing to play Warhammer, at least Warhammer, right? That's not including all the other war games that might appeal to different groups of people. But they don't play because they can't pay, because Games Workshop only wants payers, they don't want players. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's it. At the end of the day, that's it, isn't it? So, yeah, it really sucks. It really sucks. It has me once again. Every single time these price rise happens, I always reevaluate my relationship with Warhammer, and it's increasingly strained. It really is increasingly strained, and I just wonder how long the kind of level of outrage will last. I suspect not very long. It will last long from certain people, but there is too many people who are running defense for Games Workshop every single time something like this happens. There's just too many people running defense. You know, it's not like we all agreed. Like with Dungeons and Dragons, everyone was like, okay, the OGL changes are bad. They hurt creators. Let's go. With this, it should be simple. Price rise hurts consumers, hurts people at the bottom, people who are least able to afford Warhammer. We should fight against this. And there's gonna be people being like, actually, they need to do this, right? They need to do this. Who aren't taking into account the fact that dividends are going up, that inflation is not keeping up in pace, that this is above inflation, that actually Games Workshop have a huge margin that could eat this. That like there's all these other kind of circumstances. It's too, all this nuance to that question. It's rough. It's really, really, really frustrating. As someone, I deal with it a lot. It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating to me. Because you'd think that something like this would be really simple, like really easy to get people to buy into, but you wish the 10th edition went back to something like 3rd edition rules. The current rules are way too bloated and difficult. Yeah, I think at some stage, so I did do a video on what I want from 10th edition, but I guess I maybe should do another video that's kind of around that topic, because that video didn't do very well, and now there's talk about 10th edition coming out. I think that there might be more interest in it. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me for this almost kind of impromptu, honestly, live stream, just because I won't be live streaming tomorrow, whereas I would have normally been live streaming tomorrow. So this is kind of an impromptu live stream. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much to everybody who super chatted. Thank you to everybody who chatted. Thank you to everybody, like the mundane chat. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks to everybody who subscribed and followed and things like that. And thank you to everybody who lurked in the background, the lurkers. Shout out to the lurkers out there. Thank you very much, guys. I really do appreciate it. I really do. And it's really good. It's very humbling. If I didn't know that there was other people who agreed with me, I think I would go insane. I think I would go absolutely insane. So thank you very much, guys, for being around. And I really, really appreciate it. You guys have been great. And I hope y'all have a lovely weekend. And I hope you enjoyed my video tomorrow. Check it out. Whenever the video pops up on your recommended feed, click it. Click it, people.